Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yad yad acharati shestas. Tad tad evetaro janaha. Sayat pramanam kurute. Lokas tad unavartate. Yat yat. Whatever. Acharati. He does. Shrestha. A respectable man. Tat. That. Tat. And that alone. And that alone. Eva, certainly. Ittara, common. Jana, person. Sa, he. Yat, whichever. Pramanam, example. Kurute, does perform. Loka, all the world. Tat, that. Anuvartate, follows in the footsteps. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. People in general always require a leader, purport, who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called acharya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scripture. The revealed scripture, like Manu Samhita and similar others, are considered the standard books to be followed by human society. Thus, the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of such standard shastras. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. The Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow the footsteps of great devotees. And that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or the executive head of a state, the father and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. So I went over the prayers already. To beg the mercy, we're in Srila Prabhupada's room, library, and his workroom is right next door. His Tirabhav room is a very, very auspicious place. And Prabhupada gave us this Bhagavad-Gita with the Bhakti-Vedanta purport, so it becomes accessible. Otherwise, so the opposite also holds true here, that when the leaders are bad examples, the people follow that. Currently, the people, like in America, they like that. They vote for people who are, really corrupt, and then they think it's okay for me also. No morality, no principles. They justify it, they vote for such people. And the Calcutta Temple had a sign up when you vote for a, honest man or something. Someone who follows no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex. They probably don't know there is such a person. in one country in South America was famous for exporting drugs, still is. And the biggest drug seller, he was a billionaire, and he gave so much money. He built schools, hospitals. He became like everybody loved him, and all the young people dressed like him and combed their hair like him and talked like him and everything. And of course they wanted to be drug sellers also because they make a lot of money, and that's what people think. So the world is very corrupt, but everyone is an acharya, parents especially. They're the first teachers, and the child learns by example. They're very, very observant. And they don't learn very much, nobody does, by what you tell them. They learn by our example. Prabhupada was probably the best teacher by example ever, for a mass of people. He was so public, no matter what he was doing, there was no inside or outside or private or public, no difference. Everybody noticed that. Even our George Harrison, he said, he was convinced, because Prabhupada said chant Hare Krishna all the time, and he was always chanting. So, and I know when I joined, that was one of probably what influenced me more than as much as the ecstasy of kirtan and the prasadam, was the devotees were doing what they talked about very strictly, and hadn't seen people like that before, and so at least what I'd seen of religious people, they didn't have any idea about standards. Maybe the minister was loyal to his wife or something, but otherwise, eat meat, they drink a little at least, and they don't always refer to scripture. So the children are learning the first couple of years practically only from their parents or their brothers and sisters. So if the house is joyful, the parents are chanting Hare Krishna very happily, the child will also become a happy devotee. If the parents are always complaining about the temple leaders and complaining about, the child will leave when he gets big enough. And people will wonder, why did he go? The parents will think, I took care of him, I gave him everything he wanted, but they gave a bad example. The best preacher is a happy devotee, joyful. And I was thinking earlier that there was one Mataji I met in Africa, and she was in a different group, but they were studying Bhagavad-Gita, and the guru told her, you should memorize the Bhagavad-Gita. So she was doing that. So she had a child, she was pregnant, and then she had a child, and she was taking care of the child, but she was always reciting Bhagavad-Gita. So that child was chanting Bhagavad-Gita at a very early age, because that's all that she heard all the time, her mother chanting. But the older children, they didn't ever chant. They hadn't heard that when they were very young or in the womb. So we are all examples. Everybody has somebody watching, especially devotees. I think that's why some devotees are afraid to go out, like in Western countries, with this dress on, because they do things they shouldn't. Devotees not supposed to be doing, so they feel like I better not give a bad name, because people are watching. You're a Hare Krishna. They're watching. How do you live? Do you follow your own rules? right? So we have to be conscientious, and if we're chanting and being very, favorable and cooperating with, like the old days that Harinam, some devotees, they judged a Harinam Kirtan. If the police came, then they said it was a very good one. It was so loud and it was disturbing everybody, that means, and the police had to come and say, stop, that was a good one. Now that everybody is much more sober and we've learned our lesson, we want to be pleasing to the people, the way we look. Not that we have to dress like them, but we have to be clean and nice, not slovenly and, so I don't know if you're aware, but there's another verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the 6th canto, chapter 2, verse 4. Yad yad acharati shreyan itaras tad tad ihate sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. So the last two lines are exactly the same. And the first lines are the same, but a little bit different words. Shreya, Shrestha both mean first-class person with full knowledge of religious principles, and Ittara means a subordinate man. So whatever he does, Pramana means evidence of the right thing. It's accepted by the general public. So especially leaders, like the previous kings were perfect examples of saintly people. It's a long time ago, but they practiced what they preached. Nowadays, the kings are not really kings. Maybe there's one or two around the world where the king actually has some real influence. Mostly they're just a figurehead, and they, like the Queen of England, she's there, and they give her unlimited money and budget and palaces and everything. But she has no political, she has to approve of the, or not just meet the newly elected prime ministers and stuff. Thailand, previously the king just left his body, but he actually was a big leader. People admired him like anything, and he was a king for 50 years or something. And but he didn't hold any political influence, but nobody would go against anything he said. Everybody loved him. So if there was some quarrel between different politicians, he would call them in on television. He would tell them to stop it. So there was no way they could keep it up, because the people would have knocked them right out. But his son, who became the next king, is not such a person. So the purport here says, it's actually the chapter's about Ajamil, So it says, although Ajamil was not punishable, the Yamadutas were insisting on taking him away to Yamaraj for punishment. This was adharma, contrary to religious principles. The Vishnu Dutas feared that if such irreligious acts were allowed, the management of human society would be spoiled in modern times. The Krishna consciousness movement is trying to introduce the right principles to management for human society. But, unfortunately, the governments of Kali Yuga do not properly support the Hare Krishna movement because they do not appreciate the valuable service the Hare Krishna movement. The Hare Krishna movement is the right movement for ameliorating the fallen condition of human society. Anybody know what ameliorating means? It's obvious from the sentence. It means to balance things out and fix it up. It says, make something bad or unsatisfactory better. To reform did much to ameliorate living standards. To take something no good and fix it up. So Prabhupada is saying again here, which he says in so many places, the Hare Krishna movement is the right movement for fixing up the fallen condition of human society. And therefore governments and public leaders in every part of the world should support this movement to completely rectify humanity's sinful condition. So that's happening in some countries. At least they're approving of us and speaking that it's a good thing, but not so much. But like in India now, the government people, they attend our functions and temple openings, and obviously usually they're glorifying Prabhupada and the movement for what it's doing to spread Bhagavad-Gita all over the world. So this is just interesting because it's very common to find the same thing in Srimad Bhagavatam that we find in Bhagavad-Gita. Sometimes it doesn't sound like exactly like this one. You could hardly tell the difference in the Sanskrit and the translation. But the same conviction is always there, the same conclusion. There's not like contradiction between different scriptures. And Prabhupada, in the purports, I remember when I was first reading the Bhagavatam, we were so busy reading it because books were coming out like a new one every 2 months or something, and we'd never seen them. Mostly we'd never seen any of the books. The first canto and the second canto and the first volume of third canto all came at once. And it was so exciting. 2 container loads came to Los Angeles, the big containers, full of books. And we were unloading them and putting them in the warehouse. Everything was done with forklifts and then they had their own truck delivering these books all over America, and devotees were distributing them like wildfire and reading them. And then after, I don't know how long, more books started coming, but one at a time. So we were always reading it, the new book. And it was very, very exciting. And then I was starting to think, well, I'm not reading Bhagavad-Gita enough, because it just couldn't stop reading Bhagavatam, So then I was noticing that every purport had at least one Bhagavad-Gita sloka and explanations, or sometimes 3 or 4. So I thought, okay, well, I'm reading the Bhagavad-Gita just in kind of a broken up manner, but Prabhupada just referred to it constantly, all the time, So many purports. You look up any sloka and you search, and you find the sloka, but also you find it in the purport of so many places. So we are very fortunate, and we need to set the example for all devotees. Like you people come to class every day, that's very admirable. Prabhupada liked that. And one morning class in Los Angeles, Prabhupada would stay for some time, a couple months in the winter, and maybe 3 months because it was nice weather. When he mentioned Los Angeles, he usually said good weather, And America doesn't have good weather everywhere in the winter, Also, that was his headquarters and his very dear temple, and the first big Radha Krishna deities and many things. And the first small Radha Krishna. And So when he first came, devotees came from far away, actually, all over. And the temple room was not very big. It was overflowing. Devotees were everywhere outside. But then gradually, the morning class became just the same ones that went to morning class no matter who was there. So Prabhupada noted one day, he said, you don't think you have any love for Krishna. And he said, you are coming to the class every day, and I have nothing new day by day. Every day it's the same thing. Chant Hare Krishna, surrender to Krishna, serve Krishna, read the Bhagavad-Gita. He said, every day it's the same. I have nothing new ever. But you are coming every day. Therefore, you have love for Krishna. It was very encouraging, And at that time, every temple had, of course, everybody was a resident. Maybe big temple had one householder or something. So it was required. Morning Bhagavatam class, evening Gita class. Everybody went. You call it the ISKCON sandwich. You have the cup, the bread, and then in between is your day's work and everything. But he wanted both. So Mother Parvati knew that, and so she's kept this Bhagavad Gita class going for so many years, She has to always be trying to find speakers, and she listens to all of them to make sure we don't deviate or that we don't do the wrong verse, So remember that. I told you it's right there and you insisted. So maybe this is the third time, I don't know, but she considers this verse to be especially important. And obviously it is, because the same verse is in the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada, in the Bhagavatam, he especially says the Hare Krishna movement. At the time he wrote the Bhagavad Gita purport, there wasn't much of a movement, but he still had the same idea. And he stated it many, many times, but not in this purport. But we're all being watched by somebody, especially parents. I saw today popped up a short video, and it said, what happens when you yell at children? And then they showed some statistics, and the children are much more likely to yell or get angry very easily, and and many times the child is yelling, which is normal for children. I'm always amazed how loud they can be. They're not even trying, but they're just loud, And sometimes the parents come and scream at them, don't yell, And the child, is fearful, and he's afraid of all kinds of bad things come about. So we're being watched, especially parents, teachers, school teachers. I remember when I was in elementary school especially, this America, we didn't respect the teachers very much. And so my one teacher, that was in the 6th grade, we would see him in the hall, when we looked in the door of the teacher's room, way in the back with another woman teacher fooling around and stuff. So we completely lost any respect. Had another teacher in high school, history teacher, a young guy. And I didn't respect anybody at that time, except a few rock stars or something. But we didn't like him. And then one day we were downtown and in the evening, and we saw him just staggering drunk walking around, So then we said, who cares, this guy, So naturally, everybody's watching, and good behavior is very powerful. Prabhupada gives the example that if you smoke, you can't teach someone not to smoke. Like my mother, she smoked a lot. And she knew it was bad, even when I was young, high school. So she was always trying to tell me, don't smoke. It's no good. She came up with so many, she'd tell me, it's a woman's habit. Men don't smoke, and all kinds of things. Although women, it was advertised, now you're liberated because you can smoke. Previously they couldn't smoke. Now you've come a long way, baby. They said now you can smoke publicly, and they made special cigarettes for women that were more thin and special brands. And it became because they sell more cigarettes, the women are half the population. She tried everything, but she was smoking. Dirty ashtrays were here and there, and so naturally I smoked. My father also smoked. He never said anything, but I can't teach, because my mother wasn't like going to punish or be nasty or something. She was actually concerned. But even when she was 80 years old, my sister wouldn't buy her cigarettes because she was in very bad health. And she cried and she wrote her friends, you got to send me cigarettes, Finally, she got so old she couldn't remember to smoke. And the nurses were telling my sister, be kind to her, you got to get her some cigarettes. And my sister was so worried that she would have, lung disease or something. But she never got lung disease. My father did, though. He taught me it's no good, He ended up in a tent with oxygen and paralyzed lungs or something, And the doctor is saying, we don't know where it's coming from. I said, I know where it's coming from. So much. So we look for good examples. And that was Prabhupada's special power. Devotees, everybody that met Prabhupada, they noted his example of perfect behavior, no matter who he was talking to, no matter what he was talking about. Even when he was defeating someone and smashing their arguments, people liked it because he was loving, he was kind, but also, he followed exactly what he was preaching. So we're obliged to listen. So we need to be aware of that, because especially older devotees, younger devotees are watching, and then they do, well, he does it. Or I get questions, in my preaching, different countries, often get in one country, what should we do if a senior devotee is not behaving properly? So I don't know who they're talking about or what behavior. So it could be that they're just fault finders, and it could be that the devotee is not really very senior. He's not acting humble. He's proud or bossy or something. But he claims to be senior because he's been around longer. He gets angry very easily. Senior is not just by age. We have to respect age, but at the same time, there's other factors that would make someone's behavior. Prahlad Maharaj was only 5 years old. Sukadeva Goswami and the demigods loved Prahlad's prayers. They listened to him. They couldn't pray like him. They were on reverence. They didn't have this love for the Lord. But Prahlad had this love, so he charmed the Lord. Lord Nrsimhadev was he was saying, how can I pray? Already Lord Shiva and all these big demigods have tried. Who am I? I'm just a little boy. I don't know anything. But then when he prayed with this complete love and humility, and the Nrsimhadev become completely peaceful and charmed. Sukadev was apparently 16 years old. He was newly born. He grew up really fast because he'd been in the womb for 16 years. He didn't come out 16 years old. I think he just grew up really fast. Like Vedavyas, he also was born and then just grew up really quick and left home. And, was the greatest sage ever. Amazing how much noise they make. It's because there's no acoustics. Ganapati says they're going to fix it up. So any noise echoes all over, and then everybody screams louder to try to be heard. So anyway, we have to be careful. We're preaching 4 regular principles. We have to follow them. We're preaching humility. So we have to be humble. We're preaching tolerance. We have to be tolerant. We can't just Trinadapi Sunichana Chorapi Nishna. You stupid, don't do that. You shouldn't do this. Don't touch that. Right? That's not going to work. We have to practice. We have to find people, if we don't know what it means, who we can see are practicing nicely, and associate with them, serve them, and then we will pick up on their good qualities. So important verse. I think, most devotees, I don't know anymore because now we have Bhakti Shastra and all these courses. But this was one of the main verses in the beginning everybody would memorize. Sarvadharma Prityaja, and approach a spiritual master, and this one, and a few others were the main ones everybody would study and learn. Of course, some exceptional devotees like Prahladananda Swami, he memorized the whole Bhagavad-Gita very early on. I met him in 1971, and he'd already memorized the Gita. He joined in 68 or something. Vrindavan Maharaj also, he memorized the Bhagavad-Gita very quickly. He can memorize anything very quickly. Learn new languages overnight. But we just have to practice whatever we know and whatever we're preaching. If we're going to tell people to distribute books, we should do it ourselves. Prabhupada didn't, go out in the street. He did in the early days, though. When he was first alone, he went every day out selling his books. And it wasn't easy because nobody ever heard of Srimad Bhagavatam. That was the only book he had. Bookstores never heard of it. It didn't have a glossy, fancy cover like, other books did. But they would put it in the shop. Nobody would pay for it. And just, if they sold it, then Prabhupada could come and collect the money and give him another book. But if you read his diary from those days, many times he picked up books from shops. They called him and said, we don't need them anymore. Don't have room for them, they're not selling. And he would say, I went to such and such shop, I picked up 5 books, things like that. So it wasn't an easy life, but anyone he met, he offered them the book. New devotees came and immediately he sold them the books, And they would usually want it, because they were already charmed. But his example was so perfect. He appreciated everybody. It can go on and on. Everybody likes to hear about Prabhupada. But we want to try to be like Prabhupada. I was speaking with a Christian, very devout Christian in Nigeria. Actually, he was the most popular Supreme Court judge, but he was a very dedicated Roman Catholic, and he just loved to talk about God and things like that. And he told me right away when I met him, he said, I love Gandhi. And he said, people would ask him, can Gandhi go to heaven because he didn't know Jesus? He said, you don't have to know Jesus, you have to be like Jesus. That's what he taught kids, youth. and just knowing about Jesus but not acting like him. We used to sing in the Sunday school, Lord, I want to be like Jesus. But we didn't know anything about what Jesus was like very much. Didn't have any examples. Now it should be, we want to be like Prabhupada. Everybody in the early days, they wanted to be like Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, if you follow me, you'll become like me. So that sounded great. Let's do it. Now we're a long way to go, but at least, we're still trying. And, we're spreading, trying to teach Srimad Bhagavatam, trying to read it, trying to, give people prasadam, eat only prasadam, all the things Prabhupada. He talked and he did it, whatever it was. Very, very careful. Wherever he was, day and night. So we have, at least I have a very long way to go, but, the example is there. So it's important to read Prabhupada's books. It's also very important to read his pastimes. And so many books, like tomorrow is Brahmananda Prabhu's disappearance day, I guess. And so he was a very dedicated follower. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But all those early people, they were, attracted to Prabhupada's personality and his kindness and love, and he would engage everybody in Krishna's service. And so his book is really wonderful, all the books, because they just show Prabhupada's character, his different exchanges with devotees and how, he treated everybody individually, perfectly, inconceivable, and always just what they needed or what they, they didn't even know what they needed, but when Prabhupada gave it, they thought, oh, that's just what I needed. It's perfect. People met him for the first time, or people that were devotees for a long time, always like that. So the movement is still spreading, based on that. And it's the only way to ameliorate the bad condition of the Kali Yuga. That word isn't used very often in Prabhupada's purports, but the idea is there all the time. This is the only thing that can help the world. Okay, so we have, if any questions from our large audience here. Anybody? I think much more people are watching in their house or listening, right? Huh? Yeah, the radio and like he's outside, he always comes in, but he's listening on the radio. And that's why he knew to come in and correct So here comes our question man. Anything today? Have a microphone? This fan is very noisy.
You were speaking that
you have to.
You were speaking about Prabhupada.
Yeah.
You follow Prabhupada, you become like Prabhupada. So there are so many devotees. They say that we are dedicated to Prabhupada and we are following him. So they become like Prabhupada.
In due course of time, it may be many, for me, like many lifetimes. But at least, so many are following the basic activities, reading Bhagavatam, distributing, preaching, offering food to Krishna. At least we're doing that. But I don't think anybody, even big sadhus here in Vrindavan have said there never was an acharya like Prabhupada. One said that Krishnadas Babaji or whatever. He told Govinda Maharaj, there's never been an acharya like Prabhupada that had such love for the holy name that he could spread it all over the world, But we can affect 1 or 2 people, or 100 or 10 or 500, depend different devotees. Because we're trying to follow, we're sticking, on the behind, but we're not trying to become another Prabhupada, like some tried, and they're forgotten now.
In Bhagavad-Gita said that yam yam vapi sumran. So if we always have the sumran meditate on Prabhupada, then we can become like Prabhupada.
Yeah, whatever you're thinking of regularly in your life, this is what you remember at death. Whatever you're putting your priority on. So, we're thinking of Prabhupada, thinking of Krishna. We know he's thinking of Krishna. We know he's pleasing Krishna. So if we're meditating on him, and he was very kind to live amongst everybody, and he made sure that all his classes were recorded right from the very beginning. So many things.
Exactly whatever Prabhupada said, if we follow exactly, just Prabhupada gave the example, my only qualification is that I did not change anything. Whatever
Right.
is there in Bhagavad-Gita, I have given as it is.
Yeah.
So if we follow Prabhupada as it is, then maybe we can.
Yeah, we may, like Bhaktisiddhanta didn't make women's ashrams and things like that, but he tried to engage everybody, and Prabhupada adapted to the time and place, but he never changed any philosophy or anything. He never deviated. So that's, we have to be like that also, very careful to be checking all the time, that we're not drifting off, for some sake of fashion or what we call convenience or something. But, we may do things a little different, but no change in the essence. The outside, Acharya, he finds the way to do it at the time and place where he is. So devotees in one country do one way, another country, but they're doing the same thing. But how they present it, some places we can build big temples, some places we can't. We have to be careful, keep quiet, no big things. But so we do that, but we're still chanting Hare Krishna, reading the books, trying to bring new people, eating prasadam, distributing prasadam, all those things.
Right.
Okay? Dhanyavad. So any more? All right, thank you very much, whoever's watching. Thank Mother Parvati for keeping this going for so many years, in spite of her, serious health problems and stuff. She never gives up. Okay? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.